Same thing as last time, put everything out of bag B into my 2 little boxes, the bigger stuff in one box, the nuts and bolts in the other, and just follow the instructions. As I said, it's just basics. Front axles, shock absorbers, springs, various bits. Nothing too complicated here. This shouldn't take you too long to work out. Just follow the instructions and make sure you get the right screws. Lay it all out, and away we go. I'm going to start on the first section, which is right, bag B. First section is putting the springs and various bits onto the axle. So let's start with that. There's a nice metal axle that comes in the kit. They are the springs. It tells you what parts we need. So that's the first stage. Sort the parts out for part A, stage 1. There is 2 stages to part A. The first stage is the springs being put on the axle and the shock absorber mounts. The second stage is building up the shock absorbers. So we're going to build up the first stage. As you can see, I've put the spring on, pushed the U-bolts through. Quite simple to do. There is a bit of play in the spring, so as you're tightening it up, you need to try and get it straight or as parallel to the axle as you possibly can. I normally use the lines on this matting that I use, the cutting board, so I can see whether it's quite straight, but even so, you're sometimes better off. I've also done them by eye, so it's not a problem. When you start tightening these up, I pull them down side by side, nice and gently, opposites, until they're tight. You shouldn't need to use no Loctite. They are lockable nuts, so it's a quite simple exercise to do. It's not hard. Right, as you can see, that's the axles built up. Don't go mad over tightening these. They don't have to. They need to be tight, but not extremely tight. Also, the thing to keep in mind is you may, when you go to put it on the truck, need to adjust them a little bit to square them up. I try and line them up, as I said before I put them on, but the eyesight is not as good as it used to be, so sometimes when you go to put it on, it stands out more against the chassis, that they're a little bit out. You just undo the nuts on the bottom of them and move them to where they've got to be. So the next stage is we put these brackets on. These actually hold the shock absorbers on. There is a little bit of a question about these because people say that they stop the steering working properly, but we'll build it as box stock standard so everybody knows where the bits all go, and that's your choice when you do it. 2 little bolts here, or screw thread. Do need Loctite for these, so I'm going to put them on. Again, really straightforward. In the diagrams, tells you what bits to use and what screws. Right, as you can see, shock absorber brackets are on. I know this sounds daft, but I've seen people put them around the wrong way. They physically can't go on the wrong way because the edge of the clamp that holds the spring stops you doing it, but people do it, and then they go, oh, I'm using the wrong screws, I'm doing this. But that is, though it looks wrong, that is how they go. There's no getting away from it. That's how they are. Right, so I've put the rubbers on the ends of the pins or screws, whatever you want to call them. A little bit of grease inside the shock absorber tube, nothing major, just a little bit like so. Then you push the pin inside. I'm sorry the camera angle's not the best, it's a little bit fiddly to try and show. Screwdriver, push it down, and then on the end of it you screw on your part that you found off the F tree. Do it up like so, all the way to the end, like that, and then you put your cap on like so. I just normally nip them up with an Allen key like that, and as your rear shock has all been made, make sure it's nice and free because you don't want it jamming up, and that's one done. As you can see, the front ones are slightly different to the rears. The pins are exactly the same, you build them up exactly the same, no different. I'm trying to show you so you can see what's going on, but it's a little bit hard to actually get you to see it. You actually build it up identical. Put that in, you screw the end on, which is quite easy to do. There's one thing I would say about this, just in case you get a little bit stumped with it, there is 2 trees F. So if you look at it and think you've only got 3 ends of your shock absorber, there is another tree. Okay, so don't get confused by that. The next stage is put the spring in and then put your cap on. Be a bit careful you don't shoot off, just screw it together. Again, I'll just normally nip them with a Allen key like that, and that is the front shock absorbers. The difference between the fronts and backs, if you push the backs, they are just no resistance at all. With the fronts, if you push them, they should spring out if they're built correctly. As you can see, I've sorted out the bits to put the axle onto the chassis. There is these collars that don't look like they do a lot. You do need them, so don't think they're not used, but they are. They're in the instructions. They're in bag B, easy to find. 2 nice long screws to hold it all on. Yeah, so everything's in bag B that you see here. We're now going to sit it onto the axle onto the chassis. It plainly shows you how to do it in the instructions, so I'm going to get on with that. Just one thing to remember, everybody, just make sure you get the axle around the right way. It's clearly stated in the manual which way it goes. I just turn the chassis the right way round that it says in the instructions and then just follow it. The key factor is the shock absorber brackets, which are these here, have to be facing forward, so it sits in something like that. Ideally, that's where it will sit once it's all put together, in there like so. It's quite fiddly, but it will go in with a little bit of patience. Okay, just so you do know, it's quite easy. Look, that's how easy it is, and you got it around the wrong way. So yeah, take note of where it's got to go and what way it's got to go. It does make the difference. Obviously you want your model to work properly and be done properly. So yeah, that's the wrong way, that's the right way. So the shock absorbers brackets that are here sit to the front. Right, so quite easy. There's a special bolt that goes through the shock absorber, nut on the back of it. Same up here with the shackle. It's better to see it on this one here. I haven't done them up yet. Now it's easy to tell whether these springs are in line with your chassis, because your chassis has got a straight line and you'll see if it's miles out, you'll see it, and that gives you an idea of where everything's got to be. Just so everybody can see it, it's not hard. If you've got to move your axle, now's the point to do it. You can straighten it up. So as you can see now, the suspension's on the chassis, I've bolted it on. Next stage is to put shock absorbers on the shock absorber mounts and bolt them to the frame. We do have to use these, so don't leave them out. They're tiny, not super small. I don't know if you can see that on the camera, it's probably not focusing properly, but it's a little feral bush that spaces it out, so don't forget them. Again, it tells you what bolts to use, what nuts to use, just follow the instructions. Also keep in mind the front shock absorbers are, as you can see, got a little spring in them, so they actually spring out, where the rears do not have. Okay, so obviously right shock absorber, right axle, and we'll get on with it. As you can see, sorted my parts out. Just a little bit of quick information. You've got these little clips here that are called E-clips. Very easy to lose. Very easy to lose. They are a little bit of a pain to put on. They go on these pins at the end. It's very clearly marked in the instructions where they go, but just keep in mind they are a little bit of a pain to put on. I'm going to build this little lot up. It's pretty much stuff that you've done before. A few balls put in with the nuts and bolts locked in, and then we'll build up the kingpin that holds the wheel on, or the stub axle, whichever you want to call it, on E8 and E9. Nothing really too complicated here, apart from these pins that can be a bit of a pain to put on, some of these clips, sorry, onto these pins that can be a bit of a pain sometimes to put on. But persevere with them, they do go on. You might not think they do, but they do go on. Right, as you can see, I've built up E8 and E9. Just quickly, just a little bit of a tip. E8 has got a space for another ball joint here, and don't get confused and think there's one missing out of the kit, because there's not. It's not meant to have one in there. It's basically the way the casting's done, the universal. It doesn't have one here. So now I'm going to build up the next part of this. Sorry, my fingers are in the way of the camera, but basically this sits in here. The pin drops down through the axle, and then, which is this pin here, as you can see, and then on the end, I don't know if the camera's going to pick it up, it's struggling very much to pick up the detail on this. There's a little ridge that your clip goes in, so I'm going to put that on my axle now. It's really well explained in the instructions. A little bit of grease on this pin to make it lubricate a little bit, nothing too much. They are quite floppy when they're in anyway, and we'll get on with it. Alright, as you can see, I've fitted the stub axles on. These are where the little clips go here. I don't know if you can see it clearly, but it's marked quite clearly on the instructions, and all you do is you just push them on into the groove. Make sure they go on properly, because they go on but they hang over here a little bit. Got to make sure they're on completely, and then all that's left to do is the rods that we made up in the earlier part clip on there, and a rod will go from, I don't know if you can see this, but from here to there as well, which we've made up. Again, illustrated very well on the diagrams. Just a quick tip, these have got a lot of play in them, as you can see. I sometimes get a washer and put it in here. Now, I'm not telling you to do this because it suits me and it takes out the little bit of play that's on them, and I like them without no play. The play don't do no harm. It just makes the steering a little bit sloppier than it should be. If it's your first time, I'd say to you, just build it as spec, and then once you're comfortable with it, you can decide whether you can fit a washer in there and take out the slop. I'm going to leave mine as standard at the moment, purely because I've got to paint the chassis, once the chassis is painted, all the axles are painted, then I'll decide whether I want to put the mod in, and I'll probably show you that if I do it anyway. But at the moment we're building this truck out the box, so I'm trying to make it easy for everybody to follow. I know there's loads of other people out there on YouTube that have done this, and probably done it better than what I am, but if someone's building one, it just makes life a little bit simple if you point out the few things. So now really all the front suspension's built, the stub axles are on. I'm going to find the linkages, put them on. You'll probably need a pair of pliers to put the linkages on. The balls are quite tight with the ball joints on them. They're quite stiff to put on. Some people manage to do it with their fingers, but sometimes you need to get a pair of pliers and just squeeze them on. But I'm going to find them, put that on, and you know what, hopefully we should be front suspension done. So here are my linkages that I made up earlier on. I think we've done them in the very first bit of the video. We're obviously going to use them. So to put them on, you just literally put them on the ball like so, and then push them on. Now I might be lucky. Yep, that one's gone on. And I can see already, just by looking at this one, it's going to be close whether that's right. So what I normally do is just try and hold them on there and see how far out. So I don't know if you can notice it on this one, but the steering's a little bit out. So this one's straight, and this one here, I don't know if it shows you on the video, it's probably not enough detail on it. This one's not. So I need to make it a little bit longer. Just wind it out. As I said, these measurements are not always perfect on these, and you know what, too much, so I've got to wind it back in a bit now. So you get it to where you want it, so they're both perfectly as straight as you can get them, so they're both really doing well. Takes a little bit of fiddling, but you do get there, and it's worth doing this bit of fiddling now because it makes life a lot easier as you go on. You don't want to be doing this halfway through your kit. It's easier to do it with it upside down, with no plastic work on it, and without causing no damage to anything. So that's how I do it. So I've managed to get all the linkages on. What you're after is 90 degrees, 90 degrees. I'm going to take some close-ups of how this is set up without no voiceover, just close-up photos so you can actually see what it should look like, or how I do it, what I think it should look like. It's quite easy. Once you get in the knack of it, it's really easy. As long as this bit here is 90 degrees and these are sitting straight, so straight ahead steering, you're there. That's how I do it. As you can see, that's the chassis built up. Front axle, only the back axles to do on the chassis. So we're now finished bag B. So the next video will be bag C. As you followed me, you can see it's not that bad to do. So please subscribe. Give us some likes and things like that, all that sort of stuff, and I'll see you at bag C.